On today's Locked On Giants podcast, we're getting you ready for the NFL Combine with our special guest, Brandon Olsen, who is with Locked On Gators and also New York Giants on SI. That's coming your way next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of our written work, including that of my guest, Brandon Olsen. And before we get into our discussion on the Combine, quick welcome on in to our Blue Crew community members, our newcomers, our everydayers, and everybody in between. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And Brandon, we're just about done with the the second week of no football. Things are starting up again next week with the NFL Combine. How excited, how much are you looking forward to this?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to, and I realize that the Combine has lost a little bit of the value that it used to have as far as the testing goes, but it's still awesome to see how people move. It's great. There's also way more value behind the scenes than there is actually watching it at this point. Interviews are a massive part, especially for players that didn't compete in the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Game. I'm excited for it, though. I really I remember going back to high school. I would stay home from school to watch the NFL Combine, which is bad because it's a week, so I get it. But I would stay home from school to watch the NFL Combine, and it's an awesome event every year. And I love that they're trying to make it more of a primetime event. But yeah, it's an awesome time.
For sure. And, a key component of it is the medical checks, obviously, and the interviews. And actually, speaking of the medical checks, I'm going to start there rather than start with quarterbacks, which is where I think a lot of people wanted me to start. But the reason why I want to start with medical checks is because you look at the cornerback class that is going to be there. A lot of those guys, some of the top names, have some injury issues that they're coming off of. There's a few guys that have clean injury histories and whatnot, but who are some of the guys at the cornerback spot, since that is a big need for the Giants, that are coming off injuries that maybe you're most curious to see where they stand health-wise?
Player number one there has to be Siobhan Revel from East Carolina. Great athlete. We know that tore his ACL early in the season, and that's – I get it. People talk about how, a torn ACL isn't career ender anymore. It's not as bad as it used to be. But there's also still some concern there, especially when a guy is 7 months off of it now. Getting that medical check is going to be very important for a guy that when he got injured in early 2024, we were talking about, hey, he's working his way clearly into the first round of the NFL draft as a group of 5 cornerback. That's not super common to see anymore. And part of that is because great athletes typically go to SEC, Big Ten programs and big schools like that. But now we're seeing this group of 5 corner in Siobhan Revel, who tore his ACL in September and needs this medical check because athletically we know what he can do. His film is great. But how early is he going to be ready? How ready is he now to actually get done with all the workouts and be able to impress there? I think that he's probably the corner that it's most important that he actually clears and is doing a good job there, because it's just one of those things where best ability is availability, and teams aren't going to spend a first-round pick on you if you're hurt. And that for the Giants, late or early second-round pick, he could be right there. That could be their wheelhouse to go get a guy like Siobhan Revel.
Speaking of corners, I think Travis Hunter is going to be at the Combine. I don't know if he's planning to work out, but there was a report that the Giants view him as a cornerback. And I'm just kind of curious, you've watched him, I'm sure, at the college ranks and whatnot. Do you agree that cornerback is his best position moving forward? Or, can he be that that dual threat on both sides of the ball?
I think that corner is his wheelhouse. Like that's where he should be. Absolutely. I think he's got immense value there. And as we're talking more and more about how NFL front offices are using analytics and talking about the value of taking certain positions with certain picks, getting a top corner is not an easy thing to do. It's harder than getting a top receiver. We've seen that consistently. Guys like to play offense more than they like to play defense. So when they're in high school and college, they want to play receiver. They want to do the little dances. They want to focus on that. And we don't see as many elite athletes play corner like we do with Travis Hunter. I think the unique thing with Travis is that he can go out there and be your corner one from a very early point in his career. He's elite there. And you've got multiple years of production and multiple years of film to watch him be really at a corner spot. And so you could see him there and then also play him occasionally on offense. I think that's the best way to use him. I also, as a receiver, I don't think he's an amazing prospect. I really don't. I think that Colorado offense really focused on let's get the ball to our guys in space underneath and let them run there. It wasn't so much about Travis Hunter being an incredible route runner. He was going up over DBs and not creating the separation there. Still a good receiver, but he's not a wide receiver one, in my opinion. He's a corner one and the top corner in the class that can come in, contribute 8 to 10 snaps on offense every game, maybe play special teams, just get the ball in his hands that way. But corner, he's the best in the class, and it's not particularly close. I think he's going to be a fantastic corner.
There are guys that, I don't think are going to work out at the combine for whatever reason. I don't have the complete list in front of me. I don't know if you know maybe more than I do at this point, but who are some of the guys that maybe are, that you feel need to work out at the combine in order to maybe improve their draft stock?
I think there's certain guys that it's not so much about the actual numbers that you test with. It's not so much about the actual testing drills there. It's just showing your movement, working positional drills even. An edge rusher is a good spot to start about because I think with edge, you have some guys who are undersized or played at an undersized weight, like looking at Marshall's Mike Green, Tennessee's James Pierce. Both of those guys came in with the giant, massive question of, okay, they look explosive. That's great. They bend around the edge. That's great. They're incredibly productive, both of them. But they're playing at 235, 240. And in the NFL, they will eat you alive if you're playing at that weight on the edge. And so I think for guys like that, it's not so much about, what's his 40 look like? But you need to show up at a heavier weight than you played at in college and just look as explosive as you did. Like looking at, for the edge rushers, they do that little figure 8 drill where they run around the hula hoops and they're chasing the ball and they're doing all that stuff. I think those are important because it shows off your bend. And if you can still bend and explode at, let's say, 260, then I think that you really help yourself there coming off the edge. And so I think edge is really the spot where we look at guys and we say, you need to show up and work out, especially if you're an undersized guy like a James Pierce or like a Mike Green, or if there's an offensive tackle who is lighter, an offensive lineman in general who is lighter than most guys. If you can come in and gain that weight and still move the way that you move on film, that's important for a lot of those guys. So I think that when we talk about the testing, a lot of it is answering questions that they have about you. And a lot of those come from just your size. If you're too light, can you gain weight and remain that athletic and remain as athletic as you were? Because we've seen top prospects kind of take off the combine week. And part of that is because we've got so much more information and data available to us during the season. A lot of these teams have access to your GPS time during the season. So it's like, do I care how fast you run a 40 if you can run 22.5 miles per hour during the game? I don't need to see your 40-yard time then because I know what you run on film. I know what you run in game. And I think that advance in technology there has kind of led to more guys taking breaks from the combine.
This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. If you are waiting and wondering and worrying if you are going to get any money back on your taxes, worry no more. Get matched with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. Your TurboTax expert will give your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so that you can focus on your day. Your expert will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. That's how taxes are supposed to be. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee for details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right. Now, speaking of guys who maybe need to show something, let's talk about the quarterback class. Now, again, I don't know off the top of my head if the top guys, Sanders, Ward, Jackson Dart, are they going to be throwing or not? That being said, if they don't throw, do you think that hurts them, helps them, or it doesn't matter at this point?
I don't think it matters at this point if they're not doing all of the drills or participating at all. I think for quarterbacks specifically, a lot of it comes down to the interview process, getting in front of teams. We've seen the clips, we had the Giants offseason Hard Knocks last year. We saw what they would do with quarterbacks when they draw on the whiteboard and you kind of try to impress the coaching staff and try to impress the front office with what you know and trying to point things out. And also getting to know your character there is an important part. Like, I don't think that there are character concerns with Cam Ward, but I know that front offices are going to say, okay, I understand why you went from Incarnate Word in the FCS to Washington State. I get why you transferred there. But how come you transferred from Washington State to Miami? Like why are you bouncing around so much? Are you going to be someone that's not going to want to be here long term? That's going to be a question. Shedeur Sanders. There's always going to be the questions about, how much does the spotlight really matter to you that you care about that instead of just locking in and winning football games? Again, this isn't me questioning that. It's questions that they're going to get because NFL teams are going to ask every question they possibly can. And they're going to ask questions that they don't even have a basis for. That they're just like, you know what? Let's just ask him something crazy and see how he reacts to it because that's probably going to happen at some point. So for Shedeur, it's going to be, hey, how involved is your dad going to be? You had this tweet last July where a former Colorado Buffalo voiced that he didn't like Deion, and your response was, if I'm not mistaken, the exact response was, I don't even know who bro is. He must have sucked. And well, as our franchise quarterback, it doesn't matter if someone sucks or if they're bottom of the depth chart. You're supposed to be the leader for everybody. And so that's going to be a team that I think that's going to be a question the teams are going to ask Shedeur Sanders. Jalen Milroe, hey, are you open to not playing quarterback? You have small hands, you're inaccurate, and with those small hands have come fumble issues. So you're going to get questions like that at quarterback. And I think that how you respond to those questions is really what matters for quarterbacks at the combine, more so than just throwing. Although for Jalen Milroe, throwing is probably something that he wants to do, and testing also, because theoretically he should light up the combine testing wise. And so he should be there. And you kind of confirm that athleticism and you really answer, hey, like, I'm still a freak athlete. I can develop. The Anthony Richardson thing, Anthony Richardson, his film's horrible at Florida. I covered it. I know his film is horrible at Florida, but he is statistically the most athletic quarterback that's ever participated in the NFL combine. He unseated Cam Newton for that, an NFL MVP. Teams are going to see that athleticism and wonder, okay, if you've got the character traits, can you become our franchise quarterback? And we'll take the time to develop you. And so I think that's an important part for quarterbacks at the combine.
If you had to stack the quarterback prospects for the Giants as terms of best fit, these other intangibles, which I'm sure will be tiebreakers, how do you see that stacking up right now in terms of what the offense is and who might be best to hit the ground running, say, day one, if he needed to?
I think that you would have to look at I feel like Shedeur and Cam are kind of a 1A, 1B with Cam Ward and Shedeur. It's just what you're looking for. They both thrived on working underneath passing routes a lot. Cam Ward, way more aggressive, and Shedeur, arguably far too conservative. I think that they're complete opposite ends of the spectrum there. But Cam Ward has the mobility upside. It's not that Shedeur is not athletic. It's that on film, he doesn't put himself in position to run and make plays to the same extent that Cam Ward does, where Cam Ward can create out of a structure. And I think the teams are going to value that. Will Howard is someone that I think can really run the New York Giants offense great, honestly. I know he's relatively capped out. He's not going to become an MVP caliber player. But if you're talking about someone that you can take on late day 2, maybe early day 3, and they can come in and contribute for you and execute your offense, I think Will Howard's a guy there. Jackson Dart is someone that has a lot of traits, is still young. He's still 21 years old. He's still going to be 21 at the time he gets drafted, wherever that may be. Got question marks, but he's another guy that I think can really execute the offense expertly. And I think that, I think that Jackson Dart is probably going to go higher than media expects him to. Not that I agree with that at all, but I'm fine with it if he does, because, hey, if another team wants to make that investment, I'd be thrilled with it. But I think that those are probably the top 4 for me in terms of actually running this offense and making it work.
They say that GMs and scouting departments really make their money with the day 3 picks, because that's where you can really find some gems and whatnot. Starting off with a general overview question, where do you think the various position classes are deepest, to where maybe if the Giants want, say, a running back or this position or that position, they could possibly look to a day 3 prospect from this particular class?
I think that, first off, running back right now is maybe the best running back class we've had in a decade or so, since the Christian McCaffrey type classes, where there's just elite running backs. You're going to find significant contributors all throughout. Like, you're going to get a Damian Martinez, an RJ Harvey, a Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. You're going to get those guys on day 3, and they're going to come in and be impact players from day 1. And I think that this class at running back is huge. I think the interior defensive line is just a class full of dudes, and a lot of them are young as well. There is a guy like Darius Alexander, who he's older on the interior of the defensive line, so that might knock him a bit. He's 25, so that might knock him a bit, but that just makes him an even better day 3 pick if he's there, which we'll see. He's had a fantastic offseason so far, so we'll see how that goes. A Cam Jackson, a Ty Robinson from Nebraska. I think the interior of the defensive line is going to have a lot of players who come in and contribute early on and make some plays. Tight end, also incredibly deep class. Love it. There's going to be undrafted tight ends that are going to come in and maybe not play year 1, just because tight end is a very long-term developmental position, because college just doesn't put any emphasis on developing tight ends right now for some reason. But there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to contribute from day 3 in undrafted free agency at tight end, running back, interior defensive lineman, linebacker. Those positions that are considered non-premium positions right now are just chalk. Like, this is the analytical dream draft class. It's that you're going to get to invest highly in receivers, in corners, in edge rushers, and you're going to get to use day 3 picks on the positions that you want to use day 3 picks on, that you don't need to spend premium capital on to get contributors. And so many of them are going to be crucial special teams contributors. And that's going to be huge, especially when you look at running backs and the new dynamic kick return. Well, new-ish last year, we'll say. So when you look at running backs in that, it's like, okay, well, they're going to be contributing in that area as well. And that's going to be huge. If you can get any kind of playing time, even if it's special teams contribution from a day 3 pick, that's a good day 3 pick. Most guys don't last in the league more than a year or 2 as day 3 picks. So if you can get any contributor, that's huge.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side, Brandon, what are some of the positions where maybe the depth isn't as strong, where maybe free agency would be a better option for a team?
I'm not a huge fan of the safety class right now, which is odd because I feel like I usually love the safeties. Just great athletes playing in space there. So I'd look at safeties. Quarterback, I feel like, has maybe a bunch of guys that are going to be long-term backups, maybe, but probably we'll see them playing spring football with the XFL, the AAF, anything that we're going to see because those developmental leagues come and go now at this point. But I think quarterback and safety are probably the two spots that I don't love the day 3 value. I think quarterbacks on day 3 is just like, yeah, take them and hope that you hit something. But looking at the class, the Curtis Works, the Kyle McCords, I just don't see a ton from them. It's just not a very impressive day 3 QB class right now. And I don't think that there's any way they're really going to wow anybody from now to the NFL draft to change my mind there.
Hey, Giant fans, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. The app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Speaking of quarterbacks, I know this isn't really combine related, but I'm going to ask this anyway. You've heard, obviously, that there is the wins are picking up with Giants possibly trading for Matthew Stafford if he becomes available. Now, I don't think they should trade the number 3 overall pick. If that's the condition, I say thanks, but no thanks. That being said, given the way this quarterback class is so thin up at the top, does it make sense, do you think, to say, okay, if we can get the Rams to take our second round pick and maybe next year's second round pick, do you think that makes more sense than to maybe force a pick at number 3 at quarterback? Or do you just say, that's too much?
I think it's too much, honestly. Look, I love Matthew Stafford. I think he's fantastic, but he's not a long-term answer. And at this point, all he would do is make you better short term, which, considering where the New York Giants are as a roster, probably doesn't help you that much to just make yourself better short term. I feel like that's more of a move for Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen to say, hey, he'll win us more games this year and that'll keep our jobs. I think that that's what it would be. It wouldn't be, hey, this is the move. We think we have the roster to compete and to win right now. Matthew Stafford is an incredibly volatile quarterback. He always has been. That's not an insult on him. He's always been an incredibly volatile quarterback. But when he's on, he's really on and he's really good. But I just don't see the true value in it, if we're being honest. It's just you're addressing a short-term solution, or you're getting a short-term solution for what's a long-term problem, which is you just don't have a ton of talent on this roster right now. So I don't think you should spend, if it's a day 3 pick, go ahead, but it's probably not going to be that, and it just doesn't justify it at that point. You shouldn't give up, in my opinion, the second round pick, especially if you're giving up a second this year and a second next year for a Matthew Stafford. That's just not good value, and it's not making your franchise better long term. It's just putting a bandage on it, keeping your job security intact there. It's not really making your football team better. And the proper approach, in my opinion, is just grab the best player available that you can with every draft pick and address quarterback later. Again, I can say that my job's not on the line. So I understand from the Brian Daboll, or I hope my job's not on the line. I'll say that, Patty. I hope my job's not on the line.
It's not.
I hope. There we go. All right. I hope it's not on the line. But Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, it seems like it would be securing their job, which I understand you have to do. But as far as it being a winning football move long term, it's not. You win more games, you put yourself in worse draft position for next year. and you still won't have a quarterback answer long term. And I think that that's going to be a major concern for me.
All right. So that being said, Brandon, if you're not giving up, or if it was your call and you're not giving up draft picks for Stafford, which free agent quarterback, or do you go draft in this case? What is the best option for the Giants, both for the short term and the long term? Because obviously, this year's schedule of opponents, you have the AFC North, 3 teams went to the playoffs. You have the NFC, the AFC West, 3 teams went to the playoffs, including 1 Super Bowl participant. And of course, you've got the division where you have the reigning Super Bowl champion and another playoff team.
Yeah, that's just, and also let's I'll be honest and I'll call a spade a spade. You're probably behind the Cowboys as well right now as a team. Like you're the last team in your division. It's going to be tough. It's going to be brutal. I would look to get some kind of mix. Like Will Howard's a guy I would take in the 3rd round, 4th round, if you feel like he'll be available in the 4th round. Maybe be a little more aggressive with it and take him in the 3rd round, just to secure him and hope that you can develop him. I understand that there are quite a few, or I understand that most quarterbacks taken in the 3rd round don't work out. Fully get that. But I think that if you're going to go with we're not going after Matthew Stafford route, which is the right way to go about things, if you're asking me, I think you look into free agency I don't think you go Sam Darnold. I think he's going to want too much money. And I don't think, even though the salary cap is apparently just skyrocketing every year, I don't think that you should go for Sam Darnold, because I think that means Sam Darnold's going to ask for more money because he knows the teams have more flexibility now. Ideally, I think you look at a guy like Justin Fields, but from what I've heard, the Steelers might actually be looking to keep him over Russ Wilson, so he won't be there. Russ would also be a fine addition for me. I would have no issue with Russell Wilson there. Justin Fields is a good add. Jacoby Brissett, I don't think moves the needle for you, but I think that he can give you a guy that will keep the offense on schedule. And he's been a pretty good mentor everywhere he's gone when there's lesser talent at quarterback or younger talent at quarterback, and they're trying to develop them. I don't think it's a great quarterback class either for free agency. It's just not awesome. There's a couple guys, and there's a starter quality player in Sam Darnold that is one more starter quality player than we usually get into free agency at quarterback. But I think that as far as bridge quarterbacks, Andy Dalton would have been awesome, but he's extended now with the Carolina Panthers. Jameis Winston is someone I would take. Honestly, I don't think that he'd be a huge investment. I think he'd be a fun player to watch at least. And I don't think that we've been able to watch a fun New York Giants offense for a long time now. And so I'd look at Justin Fields, Jameis Winston. Joe Flacco's probably going to retire, right? We have to assume that he's going to retire at that point. So not him, or you can go for one of the guys that have been a career backup and hasn't gotten an opportunity to start or even play. Like, I'm pretty sure Kyle Trask is entering free agency, and while he doesn't move the needle for anybody, we haven't seen him play. And so I think that that's kind of the route that I'd take at quarterback, is look for a Justin Fields. If Russ hits free agency, go for him. Jameis, but there's not an awesome answer right now. And I think it's just a bad year to look for your quarterback answer, if we're being honest.
Yeah, it definitely is. All right. Now, final question for you. We know what the Giants' needs are. We kind of have an idea on what the free agency class looks like, although that's going to probably change as guys get tagged or extended or guys get released. We kind of know what the draft class looks like. So what I want you to do, Brandon, is I want you to stack the Giants' priorities, the top priorities, and tell me if you would go draft or free agency to fill those needs.
Okay. I think with corner, maybe draft. I mean, I don't think he'll be there, but if Travis Hunter's there at 3, I think you take him and you don't ask a question again. I think that you need a third edge rusher that I think you can get in free agency, just to back up Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and you're losing Azeez Ojulari. So you need someone that can compete there. I think receivers, you can look into free agency, get a guy that'll contribute, or day 3 of the draft. Offensive tackle, I think that, and I wrote about this one last week, I think that that's a great position to double dip at. I think that that's a spot where you can double dip, get a veteran that can come in and contribute it, depending on what you plan on doing with Jermaine Illuminor, and draft a young offensive tackle and develop there. Safety, depending on what your plans are with retaining current players or if you're going to draft there. I don't love the draft. I would go free agency there. And it's also, it looks like a pretty decent safety class in free agency. I mean, we've been told that Javon Holland will not be tagged by the Dolphins, so he's going to hit free agency. You can bank on a Marcus Williams entering free agency again and see what you can get with him. I think that safety's a spot. If you're looking for an addition, you go free agency there. Again, quarterback, there's simply not a good answer. I'm going to be completely honest with you. There's simply not a good answer. I'd be willing to take Cam Ward if he was there at 3. I think that's fine. But also you don't have a team around him that's really going to help him and allow him the time to progress and develop. And you don't want a bunch of change with firing a coach or GM there. And I think for a lot of depth you can get in free agency this year, and just try to draft players that you can develop and hopefully will develop into starter quality talent and just keep supplementing depth with free agency for a bit.
A lot of decisions to be made, a lot of holes to be filled. I mean, Joe Shane, Brian Dable given a grace period this year, but the heat is already under their seat. It is on under their seats because, look, when you get an owner that says, my patience is just about running out, it's like, you better win some games this year. And, it just seems like it's a huge mountain to overcome.
Yeah, it's, again, that's why I understand trading for Stafford. I think that he wins you more games this year, and you're essentially doing with your job security what the Saints have done with cap space. You're just kicking the can down the road at that point. If you bring in Matt Stafford, you're probably getting yourself another year, because I do think Matt Stafford is good enough to keep you at least competitive with a lot of teams on your schedule, maybe win you a couple games, especially if your defense makes some strides. But I don't think it's a long-term solution to anything. But again, ownership, they want to win now. It's been a while since the Giants have actually had a great team. I think even the 2022 team that made the playoffs. I mean, I wrote it before the season where I was like, hey, they're going to make the playoffs because their schedule is really bad, but this still isn't an awesome team. And they're still not an awesome team to this day. So I think that ownership is rightfully frustrated. I would also say that personally, I think ownership is maybe part of the reason that you're in this situation that you're in, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. And as far as winning now, Stafford does that for you, but long-term doesn't help you.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see what comes out of the combine, between the results, between the rumors. I mean, the combine is where, things really start to heat up for the NFL, because then we roll into free agency. It's going to be a busy next couple of weeks. And of course, we will have all the coverage, not just here on the Locked On Giants podcast, but also on New York Giants on SI, where you can also find Brandon's work over there. So do check us out over there. Giant fans, I want to thank you for tuning in, spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And we will see you tomorrow with an all-new episode.